Ron? All right, we'll call the general government committee meeting to order.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
How about our minutes from January 10th?
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any public comments?
Good morning. I am Marcia Marquardt. I'm a member of the Sterling, Eureka, and Laketown Historical Society. And I'm here today in support of the resolution, which I hope will be approved in number 14, which is in recognition of the Hanson family, residents of in the Sterling area. And in the with the resolution, it's for recognition of the family, Russ, Margot, and their son Scott, who have done a lot of research, documentation, and the history of the River Road, the oldest road in Northwest Wisconsin, which we're very proud of. They've had ongoing promoting and work in this area for tourism for Polk County, especially as listed in the resolution that I hope that you've read through of the annual River Road Ramble, which is been growing over the last 18 years. It started out, Russ had the idea and brought forward to our historical society to promote the history of in Laketown, Eureka, Sterling area, and have the River Road Ramble to really highlight historical things. But over the years, it has really, really grown and been a significant activity in our county. So we've been finding over the last 18 years, we'll be having our 18th River Road Ramble. We missed one because of the pandemic. It's always on the 4th Saturday of September. We have been finding that local churches, businesses, and groups have also then scheduled their activities on the date of the River Road Ramble. Russ Hanson, who maybe know, is known as in our area the River Road Rambler, and he is a wonderful resource and has a lot of books about the area, and it really pulls people in. The family also serves as ambassadors in the Little Red Schoolhouse at the county fair, and Russ is always there to greet people and to talk about history and to promote this area. He grew up in Sterling Township off of Evergreen Avenue. When we first started the Ramble, the Polk County Information Center was really very supportive of our event. They had maps of what was going on. They talked to the public as they came in and asked about the Ramble. Now we're able to do a lot of it digitally. We have it out. We have the maps online. The ramblers, as they go through all the different sites, they can look it up on the phone and they can stop. Ramble stops started, is my time up already? Okay, so I hope that you promote and approve this resolution. And I was so pleased to be called by the Tourism Council and also by District Supervisor Steve Horndall about this event. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Hello, my name is Brad Bierson. I'm the Director of the Polk County Tourism. Thank you for giving us this opportunity today. I too would like to, I'm not going to go into a lot of the details that Marcia's already told you about, and many of you already know about the Hanson family and their contribution to tourism. And what I want to do today is just let you know that the Tourism Council and the Tourism Information Center is 100% behind this as well in supporting them. And one of the things that I hope everyone realizes is that the state of Wisconsin has mentioned that tourism has a $156 million impact for the county of Polk County in just economic impact. So we're doing everything we can to bring more attention to our great county when it comes to bringing dollars into this county. And we depend on people like the Hanson family, who for decades now have volunteered and done what they can through the River Road Ramble. And what I would really hope to have today is your support in pushing this resolution through. And we just want you to realize that we're 100% behind this as well. And I believe by doing this, we can encourage others to step up and step in to continue this growth of economic impact for the county. So thank you for your time.
Any other public comments? Any other you're aware of? All right, is there any supervisors not seated as committee members that have any information for this committee? Say not. All right, we have a resolution 1224. Will be leading us in that.
I could do that. So treasurer sends us a list each year of checks that are outstanding, be canceled. So these are checks that people have not picked up. And it looks as if the list and the dollar amount is not in your packet, but the dollar amount is $791. So we cleaned up a bunch of this last year. The amounts are relatively small. And the resolution is to cancel these orders, checks that haven't been picked up for 2 years. That's what the resolution's about.
Can we get a motion to send this to?
I'll make a motion to send it to board.
Second.
Do we need to specify like with recommendation to approve or?
With recommendation.
Any further discussion? Not all in favor?
All right.
Carried. All right, how about resolution 11?
I'd be happy to handle this one as well. Last year, if you'll recall, we presented a pretty substantial list of Golden Age Manor cleanups. These are outstanding balances that we will not be able to recover. They're not collectible. So what we now have is a list just from the last 2 years, which is made a good faith effort to collect these, but there's nothing in here older than 2020 to my recollection. The total amount is $143,817.83. So we will be writing off, our Golden Age Manor will be writing these down. So that'll be noted in the audited financial statements.
I have a question in reference to the process in which we attempt to make the collection.
Our office filed lawsuits when we believed that there were assets. One of them in particular, we received a judgment. The person passed away and then their estate was judgment proof. So our office is involved and works with Golden Age Manor to determine whether or not we can collect.
Okay. Good answer.
All right, someone want to move on this resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve or send it in on recommendation.
Second.
Any further discussion? Not all those in favor?
Hi.
About resolution 924.
Can speak about that one. That's a letter grade increase from a dispatcher to a dispatcher supervisor. What that is a change in cost to be $3,607 and change. To make the dispatcher to a supervisor, we need the overlapping supervision on nights, so that's our goal on this.
And you need 3,000 from the budget?
Yes.
I have a question. So are we adding an additional person and then just upgrading the grade for that position, or do we have that position already in place and we're just going up one?
So 2024, we added the position.
But it's not filled yet. So it's in the budget for 2024,
Correct.
but we haven't filled that position yet. So now all we're asking is that from the budget, we're gonna take an increase for that position of that 3,000 some odd dollars.
Correct.
Anybody want to move on it?
Is the idea then that's a more attractive position and it'll be able to get filled?
We filled the supervisor position. We're just trying to backtrack and get the
Hey, right.
right, correct.
We get a motion to move it to the board?
I'll make a motion.
To move it to board
Did you want
with,
a recommendation?
with recommendations.
I'll second.
Any more discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Okay, how about resolution 1024? Gonna leave that.
So this one was drafted by my office based upon a request from the administrator and Supervisor Olson. It's taking the amount of money that would otherwise have been in the fund from Resolution 1622, when there was a resolution that passed to provide for the cost of training for emergency responders. So this is kind of continuing in that same effort. And so I believe that the hope is that this would be something that could, pardon me, also Supervisor Warndall.
Mhm.
Yeah. Continue in that effort to attract and retain folks to provide those services, specifically medical first responders in this resolution.
And did this fund on emergency service providers include everybody in emergency services?
So I had originally drafted it and it included emergency EMTs and firefighters. And then the sponsors of the resolution asked me to change it to just those medical first responders.
Because the firefighters, they get their own funding and stuff, I would assume.
So this isn't asking for more money, it's
Right.
only allocating it?
Well, I guess that's a question for finance.
So it's money that has been returned to the general fund. It was swept at the end of the budget year according to the resolution that the board passed at the time. So the request is to take that money which had been swept and put back in the general fund, pull it back from the general fund and appropriate it for the use that it was intended for initially. It had a fuse on it, had to be spent by a certain amount of time. If it wasn't spent, the money went back to the general fund. And that's what happened. The money wasn't spent. It went back to the general fund. In recognition of the continuing need, my understanding is the supervisors have requested that we take that money from the general fund and reallocate it for the purposes related to
If
that
it's
were just
not
discussed.
used, the same thing will happen?
The idea is now that it'll be non-lapsing.
I don't think there's nothing in here that says.
I included the word non-lapsing. The administrator asked me to remove the word non-lapsing.
So that would mean it would return to the, unless you wanted to edit it on the floor, it would mean that it would return to the general fund if unspent at the end of the budget year. That's,
Are the uses of it here different from the uses of it in the previous resolution?
Yes, this one has a, for lack of a better term, retention bonus.
Mhm.
And then also the remaining funds specifically for trainings that were sponsored or organized by our emergency management coordinator, Lisa McMahon.
So there's coordination with her and like, we got feedback from her saying that this is something that would help.
Yes, I believe she wanted to look at, like a mass casualty event, some training for sort of those catastrophic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a dire need for EMTs, ambulance personnel. In our county, our ambulances are constantly tied up. There's such a shortfall of it. So we're trying to promote more EMTs, and Lisa McMahon with her work with the fire departments and ambulance services is kind of like our outreach. So we kind of proposed, warned all that maybe Lisa McMahon could be in charge of this fund, find the people, get them signed up so they can get the training they need. So it was more of an organized way of handling this account and balance and get the training that people need.
So I just wanted to make sure that somebody like Lisa was involved in saying, here's what we'll do with it, rather than us just trying to take a stab in the dark at, getting people.
I certainly like all of the description with the exception of the $18,000 slush with an unknown direction. What I get concerned about when you have those put into a resolution is that, well, we gotta find out a way to spend that. And that's not really earmarked for anything other than to be allocated without anything specific. And I guess for my Seton House, I'd like to understand a little bit more about what their thought process is with that 18,000. I think the other part of it is absolutely necessary and something we should support.
I think the 18,000 was for the mass casualty incident that the emergency.
I think that isn't spelled out in here though.
Right, that was a conversation I had with Lisa McMahon where that was a concept she was contemplating as a training.
And I would feel much better about supporting that 18,000 had that been a plan in place and put in here for that. Because I think there is probably need for that too, but I'm just always a little uncomfortable when we leave a slush fund out there to figure out a way to spend it.
Oh, what I could do, depending upon what this committee decides to do, I could have that conversation with Lisa and see if that I can recommend at the county board some type of amendment that would describe specifically if she's in a place where she's ready to do that. I'd be happy to have that conversation with her before county board next week.
Well, I'm certainly not willing to vote against it on that basis, but I think it's just a point of thought when you look at those kind of things in a budgetary manner. That unearmarked money tends to get in places it doesn't really belong.
Understood.
How many EMTs are there in Polk County?
Unknown.
You talking about full-time or
They're
volunteer?
gonna be eligible for this 30,000 for $1,000 per person.
Well, I think that's a retention bonus. I think that's
It is, but
For every
more
new-
than 30?
for every new EMT.
It'll be for new people that stay for a year.
Yeah.
Okay, it does say new EMT personnel, so anyone that's already is an EMT isn't eligible for this.
Correct. That's
That's how I
working,
read
that's
it.
working in Polk County, I would say.
Okay, if I was reading it that anyone who spent a year as an EMT would be eligible for the 1,000. But if it's not, then
I guess my question would be, what if I work 3 months and then I end up working a year? Am I eligible then, or? Like, I'm saying if somebody has worked 3 months up to this point, it passes, and then they work the next 9 months.
They'd have to have a year in total before they'd receive it if I understood it right.
That's what I'm saying. There just might be questions.
Yep.
I would argue that they would need to complete the training sometime after the resolution passed in order to be eligible for the retention bonus. So if they were currently in training and finish that training after the resolution passed, then yes. But if they're already completed training, then no.
and who's gonna be
I would say license.
handling this? Who's gonna administer this?
Lisa McMahon.
Lisa?
So it's not gonna come back, the questions won't come back to us, they'll go to Lisa. Just the question that you just had, I mean, someone could question it, but
Yeah, we can put in guidelines as to, this is a new program, so once the resolution is passed, then we can push this out to
Finalize it.
interested individuals. So
Well, if anything, people that are signing up to be new EMTs or have signed up recently and are going through training to be mad when it wasn't what they thought it was or something like that, like this particular program. Yeah, just hammering out the details, I guess.
all right, somebody wanna move it to County Board?
Do we want to just move it to the board
Well,
generally?
recommendation for discussion?
Yeah, just without, not up or down, just.
Yep.
I'll move to bring it to the county board.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion on the motion? Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Carries. All right, how about resolution 1420?
This is the resolution that you had public comment on today. I was asked to draft this resolution by Supervisor Warndall. I think the public comment probably provided as much background as you need, supported by the administrator as well.
Is there anything that, is it just a recognition?
Correct. I believe the Tourism Council either is passing or recently passed a similar resolution, so this is just joining in that effort.
To approve resolution 1424.
Second.
We're actually not approving it.
Sending it to the board.
Moving it to the board. Do you want a recommendation or?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Carries. All right, how about resolution 1324? Do we have any comparables or any recommendations?
I'll be sharing some information with you. He's going to introduce the idea of what we're doing. Then
As those of you who've been on the board for a while are aware, it's the obligation of the county board to set the compensation for elected officials. In the future, the compensation has to be set before folks would run for that position. So that's what brings us here. This is your opportunity to make a recommendation to the full county board. The HR and finance, specifically Mr. Wortham's division has done the research as far as comparables and has that data for you.
all right, I'll step to the podium. Claire, would you mind bringing that PowerPoint up? And in your packet, page number 5 on the bottom corner there. First page for the left. And Claire, if you would, the slide that has process at the top. It's about. All right, right in there. Yep, there you go. Thank you. So just as a reminder, what we're doing right now is setting the compensation for the roles of clerk, register of deeds, and treasurer. In another year, we'll do clerk of courts and the sheriff. So there's really 2 prongs to this effort. The first is to find out what counties are paying these 3 roles around us. And we have a comparison set of counties that includes Barron, Burnett, Dunn, Pierce, and St. Croix. We know for sure what everyone pays in 24, and we know a bit about what's going to happen in 25 and beyond from our other counties. So we have concrete information on Burnett, Pierce, and St. Croix. We know what they're going to pay, and we're pretty good about Dunn. I'll get to the numbers there in a second. The additional aspect is we asked our consultant, who, if you recall, in the wage study, we looked at every position in the county and put it in a grade. We just completed this back in July. And so we said to the consultant, hey, we recognize this is an elected position, but looking at what the work is, if you were to put it in the grade that we've got, what grade would this likely be? And the consultant came back and said it would be in grade P. And in a second, I'll show you what that means in terms of dollars. And again, just to reiterate what council said, we're going to need to get this decided at the board meeting next week. And it will be for not only 25, but through 28. So if you'd go to the next slide, please, Claire. Okay, so let's focus at the grid, on the grid at the top. These are our counties. And these are the rates of pay for this particular year, for 2024. And they're organized highest at the top and lowest at the bottom. So right now, Polk's coming in sort of essentially with Dunn and Pierce in a tier below St. Croix and Barron, but above Burnett. In this column, 2025, we know that St. Croix is going to be at 96.9. Dunn is going to be at 90.5. And we're pretty sure Pierce is going to be at 72.377. We know Burnett is 65.642. And here are the percentage increases for 25 for salary. So pretty significant increases with St. Croix and Dunn. We don't know about Barron yet. Basically, Pierce and Burnett just adjusted the compensation with increase. So one of the questions the board has, should we recalibrate? We could just say the salary's been correct and add an inflationary figure to it, which is what Pierce and Burnett are doing. Or we could say the salary needs to be readjusted, which is what St. Croix and Dunn have done. That's an important thing to consider.
So that's the reason for St. Croix and Dunn is they evaluated the work in the position and that's why they
We don't
won't.
know why they made these substantial jumps. We just know that they have.
So
No real description in job duty or anything at this point that we know of, other than they just made.
It's opaque to us. We don't know what they did. They just said, you know, their board has decided we're going to pay 18% more, 25% more.
Those percentages would indicate that that's an adjustment and not a raise or not a inflationary.
Yes.
So
They've recalibrated.
if I was on the board, I dare not want to understand why we need to make a 18 or a 25% adjustment. Is there much workload change or what are we really looking at?
Great. And I'm going to pick up on that.
Okay.
So when we asked our consultant to put these roles in our grid, they said P. And here's the 24 pay rate for grade P. The minimum is 77.9. The midpoint is almost $90,000. So you'll see that our current rate for 24 is substantially below the minimum. So our consultant is saying you should recalibrate. For another piece of information, the consultant did not say grade O, which is one grade up. If they had, the minimum would be 83.4. The midpoint would be almost 96,000.
Is this not statutorily mandated as far as the duties are concerned? However, how they're performed is would be according to the needs or wishes of each particular county or the elected official, but they've got to answer to the public on a 2-year rotation. So, but they are statutorily responsible for some fairly significant designated duties and responsibilities that as is the sheriff and everyone else. So that being taken into consideration, I would assume that the duties, as broad as they may be, would be somewhat more demanding for the higher populated counties. And St. Croix is obviously the highest, and Barron and us are quite comparable in population, exceeding Dunn County. And of course, Pierce and Burnett are both much less than. So I think that's just an issue that's not considered in the numbers at this, as I see them. But I can see why, St. Croix County is at, 90, nearly 97,000. Just a comment.
I suppose another consideration would be the staffing in each of those departments per capita
Correct.
and understanding what their workload is.
Correct.
I think Dunn is relatively comparable to us in population.
Dunn, Pierce, Polk and Barron are within 1,000 of each. Now, the counties are remarkably different.
Right.
So, and we have not done any, just the numbers people. So we have not burrowed into what the actual work is here.
I would note, because we just had the wage study, to not reference that and the grade can cause issues of internal equity and compression. So
There's a little flag here that just is reminding us that whatever we're going to do with 25, we should think about basically a cost of living increase between 24 and 25 and add that in to our number. So that's what this means if we recalibrate. So
Is this election in 2026?
2024,
Oh, it
which
is.
is why we have to
Coming up.
approve this before April when we take out papers and April 15th.
Claire, could you go to the next slide, please? Okay. So it may seem counterintuitive, but the first thing I'd like you to think about is that percentage increase. What are we going to do from 20, really thinking about 24 to 25, then 25 through 28. Conversations with the administrator. We like something super simple, and super simple is 4 for 2 reasons. One is that's what the clerk of courts and the sheriff have been getting these last few years. So we would just be matching what the clerk of courts and the sheriff have been getting by using 4. The other thing that recommends that is it's pretty much in the middle of what our comparison counties are doing. So if you decide to do something different, we can do all the math on it. But for this exercise, we're using 4. And we'll change it to whatever you want, but we've got to pick something to go to the really important stuff. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay. After considerable discussion and thought, we would like for this committee and the board to consider the following. 2025 pay at $86,765.95 with that carrying that 4% increase through time through 28. So what does that really mean? So if we plug this number into that slot that you saw a little while ago, here's what we end up with. We were at 71,718. We're going to go to this 86 and change number. That's a 21% increase for 2025. Then we just carry the 4% all the way through 2028. And we've got to have the same percentage each of the 4 years. So for your consideration, this number and that number, and we can model whatever you like, but this is, through substantial discussion and deliberation, what we've come up with as being equitable relative to our county set of comparators, and also within that wage grid. It fits perfectly within the wage grid.
Is it because these are elected positions that this wasn't in the study?
yeah, we can't change elected officials' pay mid-term. Thank you. Just like you can't change supervisors for this term, you can only for future boards. So it's the same thing.
That's why the 4% is included.
Right, they're in the wage study in as much as we've determined that they would be a P if they were just a regular ordinary employee. So the the science behind it was calculated, but we just couldn't implement.
Well, I'd make the motion that we go to the recommendation we're getting. Move it to 86, 765, 95. The increase.
I'll second that.
Just to move it to the board.
Yep, well, move to the board for recommendation from this committee. We can't approve it here.
No, I know
No.
that.
Yeah. Board.
Any more discussion?
So we're moving it with recommendation.
That's my motion.
Is anybody else comfortable just moving it in general, or do we want to do it with recommendation?
Well, this committee recommends to the county board the increases. It's like our job. Any more discussion before we call the vote? In favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Carries. Have a cash flow analysis.
So Claire, this is back up in the presentation a little bit. I think this graph will look similar to one we saw about the same time last year. I believe it's the second slide, so yeah, maybe go one more. Yep, oh, there we go. Yep, so you got it in your packet as well. And for eyeballs like mine that aren't so good in more detail, there's in your packet a more expanded version of this. So I'll keep it pretty simple today. This is a straight line forecast model, meaning we take our inflows and outflows for 23, carrying them over to 24 and beyond. And this is basically our cash balance in the general fund. You see, we never go negative. Some counties do, and they end up borrowing money in November and December to get over the hump. So we're at no risk of that. Max is in January when the money from all of us comes in the form of property tax, and that just gets spent down over time. Now, this does not model any substantial spend from the general fund. And of course, over the last few years, we have spent money out of the general fund, but not knowing what that is, we can't make a prediction about it. What will happen next year when I'm in front of you, if you decide to spend money out of the general fund, this number will be reset. So good news is no real concern about running out of money. If we had a lot of projects coming, all being paid off right in December, we might have a little worry about cash flow, but not really. That's not going to happen. Won't let that happen. Any questions? Not hearing any? I just stand up here for the debt analysis part two?
I have a comment if your eyes aren't good enough to see that, they're gonna have to be damn good to see these. Just something for future.
Well, and it becomes a problem of paper real estate and my case screen real estate on my monitor because, you know, I have to blow it. Yes, I would agree with you, sir.
Wasn't necessary.
That's how they get stuff by you, Jay, when you can't read it.
Right. Yes, it might be a reason for that.
Okay. The next discussion is about debt. So the green bars here represent the borrowing we've already made. And it's really highway building and the government center project. That's what makes up these green bars going through time. And as we spend down, you see that that balance declines. The orange is what our advisors say we can reasonably borrow and not exceed the debt service that the board has set as sort of our standard, which is this 2.45 million a year. What that means for the General Government Committee and the board is that if there were worthy projects, there is debt capacity to fund those projects in 24 and 25 and beyond. That's really what this graph is saying. You keep that, the total amount you're spending just below 2.5 million, you can borrow this much each year and not exceed that. That's what this graph is saying. Can you go to the next slide, Claire? This is where I'm going to hear the same comment about it's really small, and it is, and I apologize. If we were to borrow money late in 24 or early in 25 for next year's projects, and we're going into the budget season, and you're going to be hearing about projects that board members and division directors want to try to get done, we've got this modeled out where if the board decided to take on $1.9 million in debt, we would be below that threshold of 2.452 in terms of our debt service. Now we could borrow that money late in 24 or early in 25, make sure the payments didn't start until 25 and have no impact on the 24 budget. That's what this slide shows. So I'm not up here today pitching the use of debt. That'll come later. But what our advisors would say from PMA is if you want to keep the levy where the levy is and not have it bounce around, you should be consistent in following their plan. And you might ask, and this would be perfectly legitimate, to have PMA come in and tell us the story instead of having your general government tell the story. Next slide, please. So this is just another way to represent what we'd be doing in 25. We'd be paying this amount of money on the bonds from before, and then we'd be paying $155,000 in principal and $80,000 in change in interest if we borrowed that 1.9 million. Again, still staying below that threshold number. So it's a tool we can use.
You're probably going to answer this, like you said, but so this is showing us capacity that we have under our guidelines.
Under your guidelines. Yeah.
And then the idea being that if we were to identify projects that are worth doing in this time frame, that could possibly keep us from having to do some uncomfortable things if we wait on them, do them in the future.
I'd jump in there in 1 second.
Yes, I'd have to rephrase your question to
Yeah.
make sure I understand it, but
It's kind of setting the table for what we have the capacity to do. And I guess my question is the idea, if there are projects that need addressing, the idea would be is that fitting them within this capacity is better than pushing them off until later, where it might cost us more down the road.
I think that's one reason to do it. In fact, we've already had some initial conversations. If the board had appetite for taking on debt, what projects will we do in 25? What will we do in 26? And how do we sort of stack them up so operationally they make sense and then we don't exceed that debt capacity? So that work's already happening.
Okay.
Now we don't have, everyone hasn't started to come in with their projects yet, but we have 2 or 3 in each of the next 2 or 3 years that, would soak up a fair amount of that $1.92 million. If you could go back, Claire, 2 slides. Yeah, so we have, we're just really modeling out through 28 right now, and we don't see any government center level projects or highway department projects on the horizon. But we have capacity to do, I would say, a fair number of mid-sized projects between now and 29. So getting the order right is important for all the reasons that I think you're getting at, Ryan.
So to kind of put this in English, you're advocating that we would spend or borrow money for projects versus using general funds, so we maintain a rather constant levy from the taxpayer standpoint.
That is an advantage. It's, you know, I would say it's a political advantage. In terms of getting projects done, you know, money's kind of money. Interest rates are higher than they were when we borrowed before. But because it's, you know, this is tax exempt stuff, they're not what we would be facing on cars and houses. This is all modeled, I think, at 4.25.
Because otherwise, if we eliminate as we continue to eliminate debt, that levy's gonna fly up and down as projects come in and out, correct?
That's correct. Absolutely so.
So that's what we're trying to, that's what you're advocating, or PMA is advocating to avoid.
That's correct.
Doesn't seem right if it's your own checkbook, but I understand, but that tax levy challenge with that too.
So there's nothing to be done with this information
Right.
today. We're just preparing you for conversations that might come up in the future.
It is.
It's a tool we might want to use.
Hey, let's, you see if we have any recommendations to the rules of order for the next board. We're not gonna be making any, we're only gonna be making recommendations to the next board. If you want to consider our recommendation. Do you have any?
And so Shabana and I went through the entire rules of order and made some changes that were just clean up because things had changed. And we put in your packet the section as it relates to this particular committee. That's what we're asking you to look at today. It starts on the bottom of the first page that's in your packet of the code. But the changes are removing the Fair Society because that reporting assignment has shifted to public safety, public works, and that makes sense because so much of the interaction with the Fair Society has to do with buildings and facilities, so that's why that's moving. One of the things that Shabana and I looked at was whether or not the Salvation Army is an entity that the board has given money to in recent history. Those are the entities that are generally put on this committee, are those outside agencies where there's funding involved. So that's something to consider. We also changed shall to may regarding claims that are brought, because some claims are reviewed by the county and they're determined that we pay them because they're so obvious. Any claim, notice of claim statutorily needs to be given to the clerk. And then if the board takes no action within a certain amount of time, I believe it's 3 months, then it's considered denied, or if the board can actively deny it, but it would normally come to this committee first. But some claims that have been made against the county do not involve funding. Specifically, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, they filed a notice of claim with the county clerk before they filed the lawsuit that involves zoning, mostly zoning issues. And so it wouldn't make sense to bring that claim before this committee because it really doesn't have anything to do with funding or finances. It's something else. So, and Shabana, did you have anything to add about that change?
No, not that way.
Okay. Again, in number 7, changing shall to may, because, and number 9, removing that, and all of a sudden my contact went wonky. Just, so actually 10 will become 9. Grievance, this committee being the grievance committee of the WPPA contract. So if an employee wants, a deputy wants to challenge discipline, termination, or some other violation, alleged violation of their contract committee that would initially hear that.
And the only other change that we recently made was adding UW Extension back in, but that does exclude the ag portion of UW Extension that stays within environmental services. So adding that one back in there is on my list and has been changed on our copy.
And of course, you can make any recommendations that you feel be appropriate. But today's the time to consider just the part of the rules of order that apply to this particular committee.
We didn't really have anything earmarked before today, did we?
Tomorrow, the full executive committee is going to review the entirety of things. So any other changes that you would like us to add, this would be your opportunity. If not, this is what will go with the one addition that Shabana talked about to executive and then the full board. They won't be taking any action, right? Because they're not changing anything. They're just making recommendations to the next.
Was it this committee or was it, executive that we talked about incorporating the code of ethics in
That-
with our rules of order?
Executive.
At executive, we would discuss that further.
Right, and that makes sense because they are the ethics board, the executive, is the ethics board for the county.
So do we need to take any action on?
I guess I just kind of need a general consensus of, yeah, we're good, go ahead and take the changes that you've noted to executive. I don't think we need formal action.
So these are not going to the executive committee without our so-called approval.
Well, I mean, you could take formal action. Have we taken formal action in other committees? No.
Mm-mm.
So it's just been,
Everybody just basically, yeah, okayed that the changes looked good and that they're on board with what we proposed.
I mean, if anybody feels strongly that they don't want it to go, speak now or forever hold your peace.
We will get another shot at county board.
Yes,
Which it won't be coming in March, it will be coming in April with the new board. So we'll probably do an update is on the agenda for March. Just if there's any further discussion on it, so that it's really solidified for April approval.
So the recommendations of these changes are
Be made
done
in March.
through this and the executive committee
Mhm.
to go to our April new board.
right. The full county board will have a discussion topic just to make sure, yep, this is what we've decided to recommend, but there won't be any formal action taken.
March is the gathering of recommendations, and then April, the new board.
Then-
There's gonna be two more looks at this, basically. This is gonna get to executive and then it'll go to the full board
Yes,
Right.
yes, correct.
in April. So, yep. I got no
So we're
red flags.
good?
I'm good.
We're good with the recommendations?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, do we have an administrator's update?
So, obviously Mo is out today. So the one thing that he wanted me to bring up to this committee was, just for purposes of transparency, the project in dispatch to upgrade the consoles, is also including an upgrade to their break area, kind of a new kitchen. And he wanted you to be aware of that because none of that was ever, apparently discussed as we went through the budget process. It doesn't require an amendment to the budget, because it's still within the budgeted amount, but it's necessary because of the removal of a particular wall that impacts that area. And so,
Just a better description, basically, of
Yep.
what they're doing.
is there anything else you wanted me? And that's it, I guess, from the administrator.
Great. We have a review and an update of the committee work plan, but I'm guessing we probably shouldn't be telling the next committee what their work's gonna be. We need to change anything or just with that? That's what we're saying, that's what we did, so the next committee may want to consider keeping this going.
One thing I'm gonna add to the work plan, which I don't see is on there, for May, it'll be electing the new chair and vice chair and stuff of this committee, but I will be adding to the work plan. You can't do it in April because this meeting will be before the new county board takes off.
You'll get a chair of county board, not the committees,
Correct.
Right.
or this committee.
So what's in red on here? Policy reviews.
Yeah, they're delayed and we will likely, I mean, for the next agenda item, I was gonna suggest that we have personnel on the April agenda.
And I can tell you
Yeah.
that staff has been meeting, the administrator, Don, myself, Joe, HR, we have been meeting regarding the employee handbook and the personnel policies many hours painstakingly. So I think we're going to have a really good product to show you. So the delay has not been without value. We've really worked hard.
So I see that they're in red. Does that mean they wanted them added to our
No, it means
plan?
they're late.
They've slipped.
So
Weren't done at those months that they originally posted as.
we wanted to do that in January. We're going to be doing it. So just, hey, you missed that one. So make sure you get.
Well, I don't think you would not have reminded us today. I think you brought it up, but.
Right.
We would have brought it up. Because we're going to be so proud to share with you the amazing work product.
In other words, you're asking for approval.
Eventually.
Setting the stage, sounds like to me.
Be prepared to approve it. Yeah.
All right, how about subject matters for our next meeting? We'll have one more meeting as a list group. And then.
We'll have a budget amendment. Sir, in April, there'll be a resolution with a budget amendment attached for carryovers and other items.
So we will have a reason to meet in April.
Yes, sir.
If anyone has any subject matters for the next meeting, get a hold of somebody and get them on the agenda. Discuss them. On at 8:30 again. An item to go.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And adjourned at 9:28.
28.